Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is lesson 7 of First Corinthians. We have 5 more weeks to go. Yeah. And there's a lot to this book. There's a lot more to this book than you thought in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Hi, Connie. Did anybody have bad storms last night? Billy's internet's out. No. Chicago and Wisconsin was supposed to they had tornadoes off the yin yang
We were
yesterday.
bad.
Yeah.
Lots of rain.
We were
but what
watching
else
for
is new
tornadoes
Seattle?
here.
What, Connie?
I said lots of rain, but what else is new for Seattle?
Yeah, I saw something on Seattle that said it's raining again and more rain to come.
Right.
I thought, well, that almost sounds like Tennessee, really. We've had a lot of rain this year. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning. Finally made it.
I haven't had enough coffee yet. Couldn't sleep. Okay, so when we look at
I'm sorry. Susan showed you hers.
Oh, your coffee highs. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Here too.
Uh-huh.
I
Well,
couldn't.
I went to
roasting
Panera
coffee.
already.
Oh. Okay. The first part of this letter begins concerning the things in which you wrote. The first thing he addresses marriage, divorce, and remarriage in chapter 7. Then in chapters 8 through 10, he's now concerning things sacrificed. Okay. And the ESV says things, food offered. You know, we're going to be digging into what does that mean and everything. I think everybody here pretty much took Leviticus with me, didn't you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, I think I did.
No, Helen didn't. Okay. No, well, you missed a good study. You know, when we started Leviticus,
take
you
it
kind of
again.
go, huh? What, Cheryl? You would take it again?
No. Well, if you
Is it
gave it
hard?
again, I would. If you gave it again, I would, but no one else.
Are you going to give it again?
No.
Oh,
It was, but you can go on the internet and watch the videos, you know, that I've done. If you
okay.
subscribe to my channel, because I've got, I think all of the Genesis,
Good.
Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers.
Oh,
I think I
really?
even got, yeah, and Joshua. We did Joshua. Yeah, and Covenant. We have Covenant. Covenant. If you haven't done Covenant, you really need to do Covenant. Yeah, Covenant is just, if you don't understand how important Covenant is, you need to study it. Because everything is what,
Maybe
Ray?
you could put out your YouTube channel link for us. So,
I can do that, but you should already subscribe to it, Ray.
well, I probably should have, but I was just thinking for people that don't know, or in case I lost that link because I lost my computer.
Oh, well, that is a
Oh.
good excuse. Yeah, I know how that is.
So does it have your name on it in the YouTube?
Yeah, it's called Nisi's Hope. Nissis Hope, apostrophe S. Yeah. But that link I send you every week takes you to the YouTube channel if you go to watch this class discussion. And then you can hit the little subscribe button and you'll be subscribed to it. I guess that's how it works, isn't it? I really don't know how YouTube works very well, but I know I subscribe to a lot of things and I get a lot of useless information. But
So did you set Nisi Hope?
Nisi, yeah.
Nissie?
No, Nissi apostrophe S.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Apostrophe
once you
S.
subscribe, it'll come right up. It did on mine anyway, my YouTube. That's
Did it?
very helpful. Yeah, because I didn't
Okay.
do Covenant yet, but I'm going to do that one. So, but I did the rest of them.
Yeah, Covenant's really good. And we have Tracy here. Yeah, Tracy did a little acting for us in that. Yeah. There's a little video one you can see about what Covenant is. We did it upstairs. It's really tacky, isn't it? But
Did you say NISSI apostrophe S?
yeah, N as in nutty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ISSI apostrophe S,
S.
then hope.
Hope. Yeah.
Tell her
How
the
come I
real.
don't see it?
I
I
don't know.
typed that in. It says Nisi Banda
No.
upcoming concert.
I'll find it and I'll send it. Okay. I'll send it to you.
Tell
Okay.
her Stacy.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Nisi. Okay, Nisi in the Bible is one of the names for God.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
It means
Jehovah
banner.
Nissi,
Yeah, and also my brothers called me Nisi when I was a kid.
because her name is Denise.
Yeah. So I was called Nisi. Just, I got excited when I saw that in the Bible. Wow, my
Everybody
name's in the
did.
Bible. Kind of, sort of,
That's-
not really, but
Close enough.
yeah, close enough for rock and
Actually,
roll.
under your name.
There's a lot of Nisi in YouTube.
It's
Yeah,
under your name.
it's easier,
Nisi
probably
Banda.
easier to look for Denise Matthews.
Yeah.
Is that
Nisi
easier to look
Music.
for? So you
I
guys
don't
are
see it.
okay. Well, we'll get on with the lesson. There it
Okay.
is, Sharon in Pennsylvania. Why isn't Sharon showing up? Oh, she does.
I
Somehow
don't
I
have
got
my
my.
camera on.
We do here is we record. There, somebody found me because I heard that. They're already playing my lessons. Okay. Approximately 1 week that you can watch KR.
Denise
Still want
Matthews.
to. I've already, in fact, I meant to send it out already, but if you. Abigail, you're in there twice, aren't you?
I know.
You guys are messing with me.
I'm sorry about that. I was trying to get my laptop to work instead of my iPad, so I closed that out. So
That's fine. I'm just giving you grief. That's what
I
I'm
thought-
here for.
I thought I could see everybody better.
Okay. Anyway, Cheryl put it up there too, the link to my YouTube channel. All right, let's get to our lesson. Ready?
Ready.
So how does Paul begin this segment? One of the words repeated in verses 1 through 3.
No, knowledge.
Knowledge, yeah. What's he saying about knowledge? And what is knowledge? What kind of word is this? Barbara, did you see? Is it Gnostic?
I checked it out. It is, I can't get the right thing to come up.
There's 2 or 3 different words for
Gnosis. It's not epignosis. It's just gnosis.
gnosis. That just means to know, okay? It
Yeah.
doesn't have an intimate knowledge. Like Jesus knows us. That's the Gnostic, Gnostic. I can't,
Epignosis.
whenever it is. It's the intimate knowledge to know Jesus. My preacher actually preached this the other day. It was funny that it came up in the study this week, but it's an intimate knowledge. But this is just saying you already know this. It's like common sense. Everybody knows that the sun comes up every day, right? You do know that, right? And it always comes up from the east and goes down in the west, I mean, something's really up if it comes up on the west, okay? You probably missed the coming of Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy, I missed a lot, Okay, anyway, so we know that we have knowledge that makes one arrogant or puffed up. Which do you like better, arrogant or puffed up?
Neither.
Arrogant.
Same thing.
Yeah, but when you think of puffed up, I think of politicians when I hear puffed up, it's like, man, they're really all into themselves, aren't they?
Mhm.
So love, but what does love do instead of knowledge?
Edify.
It edifies, it feeds you, it builds you up.
Mhm.
And so knowledge, knowing God and living the Christian life is to be based on what?
Love.
Love, yeah. See, I asked really hard questions, y'all.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Yeah, it's really so simple. You know, I try to keep it as simple as possible, Kathy. I truly do.
What I need.
Yeah, you know, because Paul's talking about this all through the thing. He's saying one about love with how he treats other people.
Mhm.
What sort of things does he say in chapters 8 and 9? I know you guys read it.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Well-
he forfeits his rights on behalf of other people in consideration of others.
Yeah, he forfeits his rights, you know, as a free man. He talks about being a free man a lot.
Hmm.
And he's all things, you know, he's a Jew to the Jews and I guess a Gentile to a Gentile, you could say, you know, but he treats everybody to where they're at, doesn't he? And I wonder what an example that would be. Can you think of anybody that you know of, or maybe you are, that you're that kind of person? You can do that. I find it difficult to do, honestly.
Like, Denise, what example are you thinking of?
Well, I mean, to where you can, you know, be a Jew to a Jew, you know, or you know, like you got a rapper sitting there trying to figure out God, you know, how can you sit there and communicate with them and love on them as well as someone in college who's educated and, you know, or someone who's living a life that in the gutter, you know. That's hard to do.
When you get that figured out, let me know.
Yeah.
You mean meeting them
I'm
where they're
thinking of
at?
examples because we've talked
Verse
about
1 says love edifies, which means love builds up.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, a very easy way to do that is just recognize someone, smile at them, say hi to them. You know, from the littlest kid on up to the elderly, you know,
Mhm.
we all like to be noticed.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway,
And most people, not all, I have found out, like to be touched.
yeah.
You know, when we pass the peace, you know, we said peace of the Lord be with you every Sunday. And everybody tries to touch everybody else at least once. It's really kind of, you know, you know who's a hugger and who's not. And the reason I say you got to be careful is I went to hug one woman. She goes, I don't do that. And I go, okay. And I remember, you do not hug or touch Carol. She does not like it. That's okay. That's how she is. And I respect that. I don't understand it, but I respect her for that, you know. And it's really, you know, it's kind of, you know, everybody's different. Thank the Lord, everybody's different. If I had, you know, have you seen that Twilight Zone where the guy says, I wish everybody was just like me, and he was just a grumpy old man? And he wakes up the next morning and everybody's just like him.
no.
Oh, you got, I mean, oh, yes. You start thinking about it. Ooh, who would want to be around a bunch of me's?
But don't you think Paul was just relating to people where they were at, and that all of us have unique experiences in our lives that allow us to relate to different people? I guess it's hard to relate to everybody, but depending on our experience.
Yeah.
Like you, Denise, you've had special experiences that allow you to relate to people in those situations, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a commercial yesterday that still kind of haunts me. And it was about children that are on the streets alone and by themselves and homeless. And I thought it was a commercial for Covenant House. Okay. And I thought, man, someone's got to reach out to those kids. My heart just went to them, you know, because you don't know what caused them. They could have been thrown out of the house because parents just didn't want to take care of another kid. Or they aren't a cute baby anymore. I've seen that, and your heart just goes out to these poor kids. They didn't ask for it, and they grow up in a hard world. Instead of like Tanya holding that sweet little baby, they didn't grow up with that,
Yep.
and it's, so I don't know how I got off it, but it touched my heart.
I think sometimes
Sometimes I think it's
accepting
really
people is
good too
keeping
to
your mouth shut.
ask questions because
Yeah.
it shows an interest in another person. I mean, I got 3 teenagers living here.
I'm
I mean, I
sorry.
always have to say, what the heck does that mean? Constantly.
What were you going to say, Connie?
I was just gonna say, sometimes it is keeping your mouth shut.
Oh, I
My
have a problem with
husband and I-
that.
Me
My
too.
husband and
have a
I
hard
went
time.
to a wedding reception last weekend for one of his workmates. And you had to dress up as a cosplay. Your teenagers would know what that is, Barbara.
Oh,
But,
Okay,
um,
I don't know what it is. You'll have to educate us.
It's like dressing up like characters.
Oh,
Oh,
To
Anyway,
go to a wedding?
yeah,
Like the
wedding
icon.
reception. It was young kids that were getting married. Well, to me, everybody was a kid, but anyway, they were dressed up like in Japanese style, but there was this one girl, maybe girl, I don't know, that was dressed up in a stripper's outfit.
hmm.
And there was another girl that came and grabbed her rear end right in front of my eyes. I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah. And then when we got home, my husband said, I'm really proud of you for not saying anything, Connie. I don't
It's
want
pretty
it.
gross.
Yeah, it is gross.
Mm.
The
Look at
couple
that
that
smile.
were being celebrated were pretty normal, but it was the guests. Holy cripe. It's never seen anything like that before.
Yeah, but to love everybody where they're at, and that's
Right.
what Paul's preaching at,
Right.
That's
why I said keep your mouth shut sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's probably what's got me in a lot of trouble too. But then he starts talking about an idol. What's he say about idols?
It was about the food.
It's about the food. What's he first say about idols itself?
They're nothing.
Yeah,
They're nothing.
Yeah, there's no such thing.
Because when were they brought up to believe about idols?
They were gods.
They were gods. And if you gave them food,
They'd eat it.
The
Yeah.
food would no longer have evil in it.
yeah, and that you would appease the god. You would not make him mad at you, or you would feed him something so that you would get something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he says there's no God but one. But these are I like that they're so-called gods.
a lot of those around today.
Mm-hmm. And that's the knowledge all believers need to have.
Yeah, Sharon said, I always have to say to myself, one of two things, Christ died for them also, or they are just as broken as the rest of us were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There, but for the grace of God, go I.
Amen.
So then he's talking about eating idol food. Why was this a big deal? And we read lots of different verses throughout the Bible about eating idol food.
Because of the culture, what they believed. And you even sent out that handout, I believe, that was about that.
Yeah. And it's from John MacArthur.
Yeah.
Who was it brought up John MacArthur last
I
week?
did.
You did?
I did.
Yeah, and then I saw that I had an article
I have
from John
this
MacArthur.
commentary.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is a good and you need to sit down and read it. I won't go over it because that's for your benefit. But even in the Jewish temple, if you read Leviticus, like we were talking about before, there are certain ways to handle the sacrifices given to God Almighty, right? Yahweh.
Mhm.
And the priest did get a portion of that. And what they would also do is take the hides and everything, and then they had so much food because, especially during Passover, they had like close to 2 million people come and giving sacrifices. That's a lot of meat to take in at one time.
Right.
And so they would take that meat and sell it in the market. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, the pagan worshipers also did that. But the big problem with them is like what James says, do not eat meat that has not been bled. Okay. That means getting all the meat, the blood out of it. Before you go and buy meat at the grocery store, the blood has pretty much been removed. Did you know that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because it causes a lot of diseases. That's our reasoning behind it.
Mm.
Okay. But why would the Jews want to take the blood and not so you wouldn't consume it?
Life is in the blood.
Life is in the
Yeah,
blood.
we're not supposed to eat the life of the blood life.
Yeah, of other
Other
animals or whatever, especially people. But yeah, because
Good.
blood is precious. So that was sacrifice. There's they used to have special in the Temple Mount, kind of like drainage system where all the blood went out of. I mean, it's really unique when you go to Israel and you see like the rebuilding of the third temple, and how they have it arranged to drain all the blood, to drain this, to drain that, and it's really remarkable, even in the day of Leviticus, of the things they had to do and the things they needed to do to make sure that the blood was taken care of properly. When we have, I'm the altar guild at my church, and one thing we learned is, if you have consummated or, consecrated, I know consummated, that's like cooking, sorry, consecrated bread or wine left over from your communion, either has to be consumed or poured out on the ground. You cannot pour it down the sink. You have to, from earth it came, to earth it goes. Okay. So, the people that serve the wine really don't like it when there's a lot of wine left over because they have to drink it.
Oh.
And I tell you what, that port wine is kind of stout. I laugh at my husband when he has to do that. He comes back and he goes, there was a lot of wine left over. And I go, we can pour it out, but he's building right now a tabernacle, because what they do, if it's consecrated bread or wine, you can actually put it in what's called a tabernacle. And it's like a little box, okay, that you keep the food, the leftover food and wine, the bread and wine left over, that can be used again. But it's been blessed by the priest. That's what it means, okay? You're also, just so you know this, supposed to keep a candle lighting all the time if there's bread and wine in the tabernacle, because he is the light of the world, and that's part of Christ is in that tabernacle. And this, you can go all the way back, y'all, to Leviticus and read this in the tabernacle. Can't you? They had the menorah going, right? It had to be burning all the time. And you ought to see, the menorah up close. It's made out of pure gold. It's huge. Ben and I have a picture taken next to it in Israel. It's gorgeous, but the workmanship, they had a hard time getting it to where they could pour the gold into one mold instead of putting two together, because it had to be one piece. So anyway, they've done it, and it's ready to go whenever the temple's ready to go. So how does eating affect one's relationship to God in this context? What is Paul telling them about eating this food sold by the priest? And this
What's
is
that? In
pagan
verse
priest.
8, he said, we are neither the worse if we do not eat, nor the better if we do eat. So it's
Yeah.
doesn't affect.
It doesn't affect us, but we need to be cautious about how it affects those around us.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're sitting there with other, Jews, even, Jews especially were very, you don't eat that kind of food because it's been, sacrificed to idols, and that's blasphemy. That's what they call it, was blasphemy,
Mhm.
So just don't eat it when they're around, and say, okay, don't be a stumbling block,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And I think that's where we need to keep ourselves from being, like Connie said, she kept her mouth shut, Where'd Connie go? Connie, you still here? I've turned somehow my view to where, anyway, what else? Did you find out anything else?
I'm still here. I'm just getting breakfast. Sorry. It's 7:30.
No, that's okay. I finally figured it out. I've got Christina's here. I didn't know that. Lonnie's here. Kay's here. Karen's here. Hi, everybody. Okay. See, I couldn't see who was not videoing, but I can now. All right. Verse 11 says, for through your knowledge, he who is weak is ruined, and the brother for whose sake Christ died. Ruined here is totally destroyed. You don't want to totally destroy someone. We also read in Philippians, and I know I'm all over the place, you guys. I know Kathy's having a heart attack. She can't stand that. But she's a teacher, and we gotta love her anyway, right?
Yeah, that's the truth.
But and I remember this one because Debbie Curry did a teaching on it once. She's one of the teachers here locally. She's really good she goes, it's really hit her heart about how to honor someone and lift them up above yourself. And she said, I'm trying to do that with everybody, and to look at, and somebody, I'm sorry, I can't remember who, but somebody said, to recognize them, Barbara did, and say hi to them, but to lift them up, look them in the eye and say, how are you doing?
Mhm.
Let them know that you really care about them and that you're not being just a phony.
That you see them.
Yeah, that you really see them and notice them. But that Philippians statement, if you just think, if you could, she told me once, she goes, do you know how hard it is to be nice to everybody and make them feel better than you? She goes, that's hard to do sometimes.
Yep.
She goes, especially with my husband.
Yep.
But it's true, is it not?
It is.
Okay, let's see here. So we looked at worse to be lacking and better to abound and to overflow. This corresponds with the idea that sacrifices procure material blessings from the gods. So we're not going and doing this so that we get blessed by God.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And verse 12 is interesting too. It says, and so by sinning against the brethren, wounding their conscience, when it is weak, you sin against Christ.
Yeah, that one sort of got me.
Yeah.
Does it not?
Mhm.
Never thought about that.
Yeah, when you sin against your brothers this way, you sin against Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say something nasty to your brother or sister in Christ, you're actually saying that to Christ. Now that makes you stop and think, does it not?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Should.
Or when we judge or criticize or gossip, same thing would apply, wouldn't it?
Yes.
About a brother or sister. Yeah.
Yeah.
That puts a pause on you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt as I grow older, talking to our children when they're adults, it's more, you have to be more careful with it because I have a tendency to like you do this and you do that.
Still
You
mama.
know, they're yeah, they're over 30. I mean, who are you to say things like that to me? I won't tell that to my friends, but I tell that to my kids, you know, you do this, and that. And
Well,
forgetting,
you
you
know
know,
what I think's funny? My children don't talk to me because they think I'm going to tell them what to do.
yeah, yeah.
And I go, you have a memory of a child. You don't know me as an adult. You haven't even given me the chance, you know, for you to know me as an adult.
Mhm.
You know, it can work both ways,
Yeah, right.
you know, and I
But
just
we are
think,
the older ones, so we need to we are supposed to know more. So yeah, that's one thing hard for me to hold my tongue, you know, at least treat them as a friend, right?
Mhm. I
still
think
got to
it,
tell,
that
I think you
reminds
still
me.
got to, I tell my friends when they mess up though. Trust me, my friends
Yeah.
tell me when I mess up. Don't you, Kathy?
Sometimes.
Yeah, she does. No, I mean, but she does it very lovingly. You know, I mean,
Mhm.
you know, boy, you ought to see me in that class, man. Especially at first, I
Mhm.
made so many mistakes, and everybody said, "Now, Denise, let's back it up,
Back it
Every-
up.
back it up here."
The
But
first
they
thing
Interesting.
also,
the
what,
first
Ray?
thing came to my mind was because we were made in the image and likeness of God
Yeah,
is when we talk about one another and we talk about Jesus at that time. It's
yeah,
because all of us are made in the image and likeness of God.
Mhm.
That's what came to my mind.
that's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that, Christina. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. That's good for me to remember. I'm trying because people hurt you, and I say, "Okay, God, what you want me to do about this? What you they talk
yeah.
about you?" I said, "But I'm created in your image, so how are they saying that? Oh, you should look like this and you should look like that?" I said, "You got, I'm created in your image. You created me, so what am I supposed to do now?"
Mhm.
But yeah,
You know, Denise, when Helen was talking, I found out that for me, my children really don't want my advice, so I don't give them advice unless they ask me for it.
Yeah,
But when they come up with a situation, sometimes I'll say, you know, I found it doing this way works well for me. And
yeah,
you're not really giving them advice, you're just saying what has worked for you.
You're
yeah,
more
and yeah,
listening
I've tried
to
to
it
do
that way.
that too because that's experience, that's wisdom.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, I don't think kids now, the culture, you know, have been taught to respect their elders, you know, because of the wisdom that we have. And I
Yeah.
say we because I'm 69 years old. I'm an elder, and I've got to realize that too. You know, we're not, you know, we're on the latter part of our lives, you know, and
Yeah.
hopefully we have gained a little bit of wisdom in our lives.
I have gotten
Hopefully.
through to my two daughters
Uh-huh.
by asking, instead of me giving the advice, I tell them things that I'm concerned about or puzzled about, and I ask for their input, their advice. And it slowly has transitioned in that we can have just adult conversations,
Mm-hmm.
that
That's a
we
good idea.
exchange ideas and pray for each other. So I had to get out of the parent role
Yeah.
Mhm.
by putting them in charge or really valuing their opinions. And it's worked.
That's
That's
good.
good. Another thing just
yeah.
on idols, they also thought that the idols carried evil spirits,
Yeah.
you know. And who wants to eat evil spirits? You know. Another social situations, including weddings, involve pagan worship of some sort, as did many of the festivals and were held at the temples. Idol food was always served because that was meant to be a higher grade of food. So if a relative was getting married or a lifetime friend was giving a banquet, a Christian either had to make excuses for not attending, or he had to eat the food that he knew had been part of an idol offering. This would bring back the memories of their previous pagan lives. Someone might think they had reverted to paganism. Jewish believers were reluctant to eat pagan homes of Gentiles, and this was unclean food for the Jews. That was something very, very hard for them to get over.
Yeah. Would be for us too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see here. You can read about this in my notes. It has the priests in Jerusalem. They had 5 major offerings: the burnt offering, the sin offering, the trespass offering, the meat offering, and the peace offering. All of this is at the back of Paul's refusal to accept even the basic supplies of life from the church. He refuses for 2 reasons. The priests were by a byword, a familiar saying proverb. Their privileges and the luxury of their lives were notorious of the priest, okay? They notoriously lived a very, wealthy life. Paul knew how they used religion as a means to grow fat, and he was determined that he would go to the other extreme and take nothing. Do you see why? One of the reasons he did that?
Mm-hmm.
Paid the priests of the pagans, and the priests even of the Jews, got rich off of this stuff. He goes, so I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to work my own. He and Barnabas, this is when him and Barnabas were still pals, and they worked for a living, and they did not depend on the church to help them out as they were preaching the gospel. Number 2 is his sheer independence carried it too far, hurt the Corinthians by refusing all aid, but Paul was one of those who should starve rather than be beholden to anyone. He would do nothing that would bring deceit or gossip or hinder it. He would not allow anything in his life to contradict the message of his lips. He was doing, it's not like the gospel was known and you could hand someone the Bible back then.
Right.
He was the Word of God. He carried the Word of God with him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in chapter 9, I'm sorry, the second chapter of our lesson, chapter 9 was about his apostleship. Why was he bringing this up?
People were questioning his authority.
Yeah. Now, why would you question his authority?
Yeah.
Huh?
Because
Well,
he was not the original 12, I think. It makes it like he was not the original copyright, if I could. Because he was in a different way of being appointed to be an apostle. That's what I think. I'm not sure if that's right.
Ray, what did you learn?
Well, I thought it was because in the beginning he was persecuting Christians,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
and that carried across that is, is he flip-flopping, or is he trying to trap us, or what gives him the authority to be one way and now a different way?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
I was wondering, because he brought up all the rights that he had as an apostle but didn't partake of, if it was because of that, if they thought if he wasn't accepting those things that an apostle are entitled to, maybe he really wasn't one.
What does he say as his defense? What, Cheryl? You were going to say something. I could see
Well,
it in.
I was going to say that I thought it was more because he was correcting them.
Yeah, people don't like to be corrected, do they?
No, that's why I say, well, they're questioning their authority because then they don't have to adhere to it.
Yeah.
All really good ideas. Yeah. But what does he say? Who taught him? Yeah, I read your lips, Twyla. Jesus taught him.
Yeah.
Okay, but again, he wasn't one of the 12 or even the 70. We don't know how many disciples was in that upper room. Well, there was 120. We did know that, didn't
Yeah.
we?
We know that.
Mhm. Yep.
So, but, and you know, Paul wasn't there because he was out rounding them up, wasn't he?
Yep.
Mhm. Well, it was interesting when Paul started his ministry, he went off to be by himself and study for a long time instead of immediately getting with the other apostles for what they had to say.
And that's
wanted
what
to-
he, and that's what he was saying. I was being taught by Christ during that time, Ray.
Yes. Mhm.
That's where they get, you know, because he was gone anyway from 3 to
Mhm.
8 years, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he says Christ taught me during that time. Now, how Jesus did it, I don't know. I wasn't there. You know, but Christ has taught me a lot.
It doesn't matter who he uses. He uses the scriptures. He uses other people. He uses all kinds of different things.
He sure does.
Yeah.
Tracy's showing us her house.
Sorry.
That's all right. I'm just giving you grief.
I wonder
Um,
if Paul was doing like a life review, because he must have been part of the group in Jerusalem who heard Jesus in the temple, who was questioning Jesus in the temple, and maybe he went back, I don't know, I'm guessing, and reviewed all of those interactions and thought, oh, I was wrong. That would be really scary.
To be an apostle, there was a supreme test. You had to be a witness to the resurrection. And I have this listed on page 3 of my handout. It is necessary that one becomes a witness with us, his resurrection. Acts 2:32, God has resurrected this Jesus. We were all witnesses of this. 3:15, you killed the source of life, whom God raised from the dead. We are all witnesses of this. And Acts 4:33, and the apostles were giving testimony with a great power to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and great grace was on them all. And then the second term of apostle refers to those who saw the risen Lord and was commissioned by him for ministry. So he didn't follow under the first category, but he fell under the second category, right? Do you see that?
Yes.
It refers to those who saw the risen Lord and were commissioned by him for ministry. So in 1 Corinthians 9:1, he says, am I not an apostle? Have I not seen Jesus or the Lord? Jesus granted him a unique apostleship to the Gentiles. And that's when they were in Galatians, when James, Peter, and Paul recognized a pillar, acknowledged the grace that had been given to me, that they gave me the hand of fellowship to me and Barnabas, agreeing that we should go to the Gentiles and they to be circumcised, which I think he means circumcision of the heart at that time. The third term of apostleship has more of a general sense of missionary, and this is in Barnabas 14:4, Acts 14:4 and 14, and perhaps Timothy and Silvanus in 1 Thessalonians. They were commended by God for spreading the gospel along with other apostles. So Paul was saying in that particular sense, they were out preaching the gospel to other people and they were considered apostles. How would you apply that to today?
Would that have been like Billy Graham?
Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody who is very vocal. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you hear, you know, especially in the charismatic churches, you know, Apostle Bill or Apostle Bob or, you know, different people that claim to be an apostle. Okay, well, according to the Bible, they could be under this third and fourth.
True.
Right? The fourth being more broadly messenger of the churches who were sent out to perform certain tasks.
Yeah.
And but Paul says, the Corinthians, you yourselves are my seal as proof of as an apostle. And this is just an interesting. In ancient days, when a cargo of grain or dates were being sent off, the last thing done with the containers was being sealed with a seal to show that the consignment was genuinely what it claimed to be. When a will was made, it was sealed with 7 seals and was not legally valid if the seals had to be intact. It was a seal was a guarantee of genuineness. Seals were very important. You see it in old days, you know, where they had their little initials or their family seal, you know.
And the verdicts, even the laws during those times, they would seal them too.
Yeah, yeah. So seals were but he's saying, you are my seal. You are proof that I am apostle because I'm going out and I'm spreading the gospel. So he had said he had the right to eat and drink, take along a believing wife, but he chose to be single, right? Refrain from working. He had the right to do that, right? And he goes on to say, let me see, I want to make sure I'm not a full sister when connecting. Ministers to be paid in verses 8 through 14 in chapter 9. What does Paul use in verses 8 and 9 to contrast human judgment? There's human judgment, and then who else? What other kind of judgment is there? Or from? From God, right? Yeah.
Moses, yeah.
And then in verse 9, it says, for it is written in the law of Moses, you shall not muzzle the ox while he is threshing. God's not concerned about the oxen right here. What's he saying? And what does it mean to muzzle an ox?
Can't eat.
So the ox he's working, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's usually either plowing the land or whatever, or walking in a circle, you know, to grind the wheat or barley or whenever they're fixing that day.
Mm-hmm.
But what they would do is, well, you could say, well, the ox is eating too much and he's eating up my grain, so I'm going to muzzle him. Because what they would do was allow the ox to eat while he was working, so he could keep on working, you know. And it was kind of a mean thing to do, and it was selfish and greedy, because you wouldn't want the ox to eat your grain, right? But Moses says, don't muzzle the ox. He's also talking really about priests.
Mm-hmm.
In what respect?
Not providing for them.
Yeah.
You know, while they're working, you know, we need to make sure we're taking care of them and feeding them.
Yeah.
While they're doing God's work.
Right. And he's saying, I have the right to, you know, to not work and, you know, to collect money from the congregation, I guess, you know. But he says, I chose not to because of their, they were still children drinking milk, weren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, Deuteronomy, do not take advantage of a hired worker who is poor and needy, and whether that worker is fellow Israelite or foreign residing in your own towns. Okay, let's go over and let's turn to page 6 of 8. He's still talking, I think. He forfeited his rights in 9:15 through 27. says the supporting ideas, just as Paul forfeited his right to be paid so the gospel might have greater success, the Corinthians should forfeit their rights to eat meat sacrificed to idols so they would not injure weaker brothers and sisters.
Right.
We covered that, didn't we? And then I think it's interesting in 16 and 17, Paul insists that he is compelled to preach. In other words, he had no choice. God had called him to preach, and he had to fulfill that obligation or fall under divine judgment. That would be a heavy toe to road, wouldn't it? Road to toe.
Yeah.
Road to hoe.
He regarded preaching the gospel a privilege. He regarded it as a duty. He knew that he received daily a great reward. He had the satisfaction of bringing the gospel freely to all men who would receive it. The satisfaction of a job well done.
Yeah. Well, before Paul was contacted by God, he believed so strongly that he was going out and killing Christians. So he would, whatever he believed, he would act on it. And he did the same thing for God. After he got all the information, he was as zealous as he was the other time. So that must have been just his personality type. That he's going to really work hard at anything he does.
Yeah. It's a matter of being able to get alongside anyone.
Yeah.
To understand the mind and heart of others. Do we try hard enough to understand other people?
Not.
Probably not.
We
Then in
start
nine-
out trying and then no.
When Paul was a free, in 19 through 23, Paul was a free man, not a slave, but because of Christ, he made himself a slave to all so that he would win more over to Christ. And he's under the law of Christ. To the weak I became weak that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men so that I may by all means save some. He knew that he wasn't going to save everybody, didn't he?
Yeah.
But you don't know which ones are going to be saved and which ones aren't. So we have to continually put ourselves out there.
Yeah. Then I have the question, how do we live compared to this verse? The one we just talked about.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, for me, the practical, I didn't speak out to the cosplay girl. Mouth shut.
Yeah.
Took restraint.
It
And
did.
you have to choose your time and place, don't you, too?
Yeah.
Then in 24 through 27, he talks about, and that's the ending of chapter 9, it's a race. Not everyone wins. Does he say that? And he's talking about, I know that you guys have heard teachings about the Greek crowns and everything. And he does actually talk about crowns, does he not? The yeah, the imperishable crown. That's why I sent you. I love this sheet on crowns. I have a thing about the crowns. You know, that we want, yeah, isn't that cool? You know, that we want these crowns so that we can give them back to Jesus because they're all for him. But there's the imperishable crown, the crown of righteousness, the crown of joy, the crown of glory, and the crown of life. And you can read about this on that handout, but that's one of those handouts you kind of want to keep around all the time saying, I want to make sure I have those crowns. I want to make sure I have those crowns for Jesus.
Yes, we can put them at his feet.
We can put them at his feet. But he's
Mm.
saying that, athletes have to have strong training, do they not? I could not be an athlete. Man, that daily exercising, watch what you eat. No, But they would get these crowns, which was a leaf, I mean, it was made out of a plant, and they would actually deteriorate over time, right? But this is an eternal reward. A Christian would endure for eternal glory. We
Right.
run with a goal. We don't fight like a man beating the air. And this beating too, which one meant you beat the crap out of them? Discipline, right? That means, did you guys look that word up? Discipline?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot stronger word than you thought it did, didn't it? What did you find that it meant?
Beat the face black and blue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give him a black eye. Buffet, to strike under the eye. To keep one's body completely under control. And this discipline is in the present tense, which means continuous action, and an inductive mood, which means now. So you do it now and continuously. You discipline yourself and your body continuously to do what? To keep spiritually fit.
Yes.
To keep on going and keep on doing. He did until his last breath, did he not? So that you aren't disqualified. And that word is means unapproved, unworthy, worthless in a passive sense, meaning disapproved, rejected, or cast away. I don't want to be disapproved by Jesus. Do you?
No.
Strictly failing to meet the test, hence worthless, unqualified. Unfit, this word goes on, okay? Unfit for unproved, reprobate, which means a mind in which God cannot approve and must be rejected by him. The effect of refusing to have God in their knowledge.
Yeah.
So he's saying we have to keep on being disciplined or we're going to be rejected by God.
That's why we continue to study his word so that we learn more and not use what he's given us.
Did anybody else find anything else in this in this week's study that was interesting to you? We covered a lot, but we also hopped over a lot of things.
I thought that was interesting, kind of helped me understand when the apostle talks about weak faith. I hadn't thought about the definition for weak faith being one example is basically, for example, the Jewish Christians who felt like they had to continue to follow some of the customs or rituals that really are not required by Christ. That could apply to any of us. Different denominations have rules that really are not required by Christ.
Right.
But in consideration, we follow them anyway. Sort of going back to being to the Jews, I'll be a Jew. I think of denominations having come from a different denomination than I'm in now. I follow that. I choose to follow that because they have certain rules that really are not required biblically, but that's okay. I'm going to go along with them anyway because it hurts their conscience. It would hurt their conscience. Whatever. For example, drink a glass of wine. There's nowhere in the Bible that it says it's sin to drink a glass of wine with your meal. but I don't do it because I don't need it. You know, I need Christ. And
Right.
what I need is to not offend a brother or sister.
Right.
Exactly.
His definition of weak faith helped with that.
Because especially at our age, we're supposed to be wiser, you know.
Right.
You know, one thing I saw through this is Paul's humility. He was a very strong-willed person because whatever he did, he went at it with full gusto. But he showed humility in not saying of putting his will out there, only what Christ has said that they should follow.
It's a very interesting study, isn't it? Especially when you dig in it, because when you just read it, you go, okay, you know. But when you learn the background of it and the word study and everything, I think it just makes it richer, don't you?
Yes, yes.
All right, shall we listen to Kay and see what she has to say?
Melanie,
Thank
you were
you.
thorough.